Hi, I'm Mark Needham with StarTree, and in this video we're going to learn how to ingest Avro encoded data into Apache Pinot. So Avro is a popular data serialization format that lets you define a schema for the data that you're publishing to your data streaming platform. And we're going to have a look at a script to generate some data in Avro format. So if we look at the top of the file, we can see we've got our imports. So mostly it's different classes from the Confluent Kafka library. If we scroll down a bit, we can see our generate data function. So starting from the top, so we've got some code that's reading our Avro schema. If we come down a little bit, we see we define our schema registry. So this is using the Confluent schema registry. So we need to say where that is running. If we come down a little bit more, you can see we specify the Avro serializer. So we're going to be using this later on, and that takes in the schema registry client and then our schema itself, so value schema. And then finally, if we come down, we can see we've got the producer. So we pass in the producer, indicating where is Kafka running. And then finally, on the bottom, we've got some of the data that we're going to be generating. If we scroll down a little bit more, you see we're into an infinite loop here. And what this is doing is it's picking some of those values from those data items at the top and sort of generating a random choice and then creating an event. And then finally, what we need to do is call the producer. So we say we're going to produce a value into the telemetry topic, and we're going to use the Avro serializer to serialize our message. And then finally, every 1,000 messages, we're going to flush the producer. Now what we'll do before we run that, let's create a topic. So we're going to use the red panda keeper tool to do this. So we'll say, hey, create the telemetry, and we'll give it 5 partitions. And once we've done that, let's run the data generation script. It's not really going to output anything. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come over to another tab, and we'll use the kcat tool. So we're going to call kcat. We'll tell it where our broker is, where the topic is. We'll indicate that it's going to be an Avro, and then we'll point out where the registry is, and then we're just going to grab 3 messages and have a look at those. And you can see, look, it's all looking good so far. We've got the messages coming in with various different data, sort of capturing like imaginary data, telemetry data from somebody watching Netflix or YouTube or something like that. Now what we're going to do is let's have a look at the Avro schema that is backing all that. So we'll open that file, and you can see here, this is not a super complicated Avro schema. You can do like a lot more clever stuff than this, but you can see we've got the timestamp, we've got a user ID, video ID, country, and then a few other fields as well. Now you can do complicated nesting in here, but we're keeping this reasonably flat. Let's come out, and now I want to show you how do we go from that Avro schema to a Pino schema. And there's a really nice tool called Avro schema to Pino schema. So we can call it, and we indicate where is the Avro schema file. So we'll pass in that. We'll say, what do we want our Pino schema to be? So we'll say, let's say telemetry, indicate where does it need to write the outputs, the schema to, and then we're going to give it the time column as well. You can also specify, if you had metric fields, you can indicate which ones those are, or if you wanted to be more explicit about which fields are dimension fields, you can specify that. Otherwise, it's just going to default all of them to dimension fields. So if we run that and just give it a few seconds, and then we're going to use just a little tool that I've got. So it actually creates quite sort of maximized JSON, if you like. So I'm just going to use this tool just to minimize it, and we'll put it into the config schema JSON file. And now let's open that up with Vim. And so you can see here, this is the Pino schema that it's created, and this looks pretty good, I'd say. So we've got the user ID, the video ID, everything is looking pretty good up there. Only thing I would want to change is under the date time field specs, I would want to use the timestamp field. So let's just update that schema to do that. So we're going to change the data type to be timestamp, and then we'll just update the format and the granularity to be milliseconds. Once we've done that, let's save that file, and we're going to come back to the terminal. Next thing to look at is our table config. So let's open that up. So you can see at the top, we've got the name of the table, so telemetry, the schema, and it needs to be the same as the schema, so telemetry as well. And we're indicating it's going to be a real-time table. So we're going to be expecting some sort of streaming config further down. So if we come down a little bit, you can see this is our Kafka config. So we start with the location of the broker and the name of the topic. And then this is the bit that we need to really focus on just underneath there. So we need to say, hey, we're going to be feeding you in Avro data. This is the name of the Avro schema, and this is where this schema registry is. So it's going to go and have to look that up in order to decode the messages. And then finally, it's going to use this special decoder class down here. So this is different than the one you would use if you were, for example, processing JSON messages. So we need to make sure we use this particular decoder. Otherwise, you'll get a bunch of exceptions. Now that we've looked at that, let's go back out and we're going to create our table. So we'll call the add table command. We'll pass in our schema file, our table config file, and let's run that and give it a few seconds again. And now we're ready to navigate over to the Pino UI and have a look at what we've got. So let's click on our telemetry table up on the top, and you can see it's got a bunch of records in there. We can then click on the run query button a couple of times and sort of see that more and more records are coming in. And to conclude, let's have a look. Let's write a little query. So we'll say, let's find out the resolutions. Let's count the number of resolutions that are most common, let's say in Great Britain, and then we'll order it by the resolution. And so you see we get back, there's kind of 200,000 across each of the different resolutions. And so that's the end of this video in which we've learned how to ingest Avro encoded data into Apache Pinot. Give it a try and let us know how you get on, and I'll see you in the next video.